Welcome, Raider Nation, to the W2W review. I am the Oakland Knight, and joining me, as always, is my partner in crime, Raider Pirate. What's going on, Pirate?
What's up, Raider Nation?
All right, guys. On today's show, we're going to be going over five great topics that we found on NFL Spin Zone from a Maurice Morton. He's got five topics of what to look for in training camp, so we're going to go over that today. And Pirate, what do you got for us today? What's the first topic?
Yeah, so NFL Spin Zone basically released out this morning the five critical questions going into training camp, and it's actually Maurice Moton, so we don't want to bastardize the guy's name here, but you can follow him on Twitter at Mo M-O-E Moton M-O-T-O-N, and he also has a YouTube channel for those of you that aren't just into Raider news, but like a little bit more of the entire NFL. They've got a show with a few different broadcasters from different teams called Man to Man Coverage on YouTube. So go ahead and check that out. We'll include that in the comments below as well. But Maurice, basically, who's a Raider fan, or at least covers the Raiders and has covered the Raiders in the past, points out sort of these five questions that he has. And question number one that he has going into training camp is, will tight end Clive Walford participate fully in practices in the entire training camp because of last year? Will the Raiders carry a fifth wide receiver? Will safety Carlos Joseph, what will Carl Joseph look like in action once he's completely healthy? Will Jihad Ward follow in Mario Edwards' footsteps as a sort of a reach in the second round that turns out actually to be a quality player? And where does Carrie take the majority of his reps this season? So that's where we're going to start, partner. Number one, Clive Walford, your thoughts?
First off, Maurice, I apologize for bastardizing your name. It happens from time to time in this business. So, anyways, as far as Clive Walford goes, I think Clive Walford is going to be a major impact player as far as him getting on the field in training camp. All signs point to it. I know he had a hamstring issue last season, but it's football. These kind of injuries are going to happen to all players, not just Clive Walford. So we have to take that with a grain of salt as far as, hey, it could be a hamstring, it could be a freaking turf toe. There's so many things that happen to these players, even right now as they're getting ready to enter training camp. So I'm just going to focus on the fact that the reports say that he will be participating in training camp. So, and I'm expecting a lot from Clive Walford. I mean, he's our best tight end. He's our best all-around tight end. He could block, he can run routes, he can catch, he's big, and he actually has some speed for his size to get up the seam. So it's something that we were waiting for all last season, but we saw it in flashes. We didn't see a consistent dose of it, but I see us getting that this season. And let's say he gets a hamstring. I like what Rivera brings to the table, and then you add Lee Smith to the equation. The combination of Rivera and Smith in there, you have an extra tight end, in their blocking, which is Lee Smith. And Rivera has really, really improved. And we had him on the trading block. We tried to get rid of him because of the plethora of tight ends that we're actually carrying at this point. But no one bit, and I'm kind of excited that they didn't, because this gives us an opportunity to run the same tight end crew that we had last season. And I think our tight ends rank up there, probably at least top five in the NFL, because and they all bring something different. That's the thing. They all have a different kind of specialty. Rivera's just a pass type guy, even though he has improved on his pass blocking and run blocking. He's more of a passing tight end. Clive Walford is the complete package. And then you got Lee Smith, who's great at run blocking, so you could put him in there in elephant packages, goal line situations, and what have you. So I like our tight end crew, and I believe that Clive Walford's ceiling has not even been close to being reached yet. And I'm excited to see how Musgrave not only uses the tight end more this season, but how Clive Walford is used, because we saw some great flashes from him last year, partner.
Yeah, when I take a look at this, I think to myself, we've got some good talent here. Clive Walford is a talented player. We saw it last year. He's able to get down the seam, make big plays, catch the ball. He can track the ball. He's a good blocker. He's not a great blocker. He's not a Lee Smith type blocker, but I think he bridges that gap of being a complete kind of tight end that we haven't seen, probably in a long time. I mean, we're talking a Brent Jones type, or the type of tight end that could get in there, mix it up with you, but can also take it down the field, catch the ball. I think that the type of guy we wanted Ricky Dudley to be, and some of the other tight ends, that we've had. But this is a guy that can block, he can catch, he can run. And one of the things when you get a big guy, with a lot of speed, you're going to have hamstring issues. This is a guy that's trying to run as fast as he can, cut, do different types of things. And that's when you're going to tear that hamstring. So I don't think this is an issue where, hey, this guy's injury prone. He had the ATV accident. That's going to keep him out. He missed 12 out of the 14 practices for training camp last year, but he was a rookie. I mean, he's coming out of nowhere to a brand new team, learning new. He went through the season. He showed the talent that he has. I don't think it's going to be quite as important this year. If he misses a little bit of time. Now, granted, you want to develop chemistry, and you want to have him there throughout training camp into the preseason, and then healthy for the regular season. But I don't think that the ATV issue is a big deal. I just think it's he was out there clowning around, and he injured himself. So we'll see what happens, and how it goes from here. But in terms of blocking, in terms of passing, just being an integral part in the screen game, like Maurice mentions here, one of Musgrave's tendencies really is to have those screen passes to get to reach the sideline, and to have his tight ends out there in space, blocking and doing things like that to spring the ball carrier. So he's complete. I think with Rivera, like you said, on the other side, I think Rivera is underrated. I think the ATV accident was a blessing because it allowed us to keep Rivera. And I think we're just scratching the surface with Michael Rivera. Your thoughts?
No, yeah. I mean, Rivera's coming into his own himself, right? And has he shown that he's that elite guy? No. I mean, he hasn't shown that he's going to take over like a Rob Gronkowski would, right? Or an ex-Tony Gonzalez or something like that, or Antonio Gates. But Rivera showed some skill sets off and on. He has some chemistry with Carr. And what this allowed us to do, like you said, is carry all the same tight ends we had last season. And they all bring something different to the table, which I like, because we have it's my new favorite word, guys, plethora. I love the three amigos, so I love using that word. So we have a plethora of tight ends, and that is something great. Anytime you could have a plethora of anything on your football team, you're sitting pretty good. And when you have a skill set, each different skill set, we could run different packages and cause confusion. So if you ran any of those combinations, they either you got a double receiver threat, or you throw Lee Smith in the mix. They got to be ready for anything, and so it could throw the coverage off for the defenses. So,
do you think though, Knight? Do you think that we could at least have something like what the Patriots had with Hernandez? I know people don't like to mention his name, but with Aaron Hernandez and Gronkowski, you think Walford can be the Gronkowski, and a guy like Rivera can be the Hernandez? Do you think they're at least that good?
I believe that they can be. To the exact level, time will tell, right? But I do believe with Clive Walford's ability to be a Gronkowski who can do it all, block, stretch the seam. He's such a big physical guy with great hands. He can make a lot of plays, which is going to open up a lot of more doors for a guy like Rivera, because Rivera is more of a route running, hands catching type guy. So he could play off what Walford brings, and that's what you're looking for. If you have two of the same type of player, yeah, it could be beneficial, but to have two guys that do things differently, it, like I said, it throws defenses off, and that's what you want when they're game planning and they're looking at these players and they bring all these different things. It's just more for them to look out for, get confused on. We run motions in different packages. It benefits us moving forward to confuse the defense and open up even that alone could open up holes in the running game. So it's exciting to see that we have this kind of talent on the roster.
Yeah, and Maurice kind of at the end of the article, he kind of puts out there, look, if Walford does well, then we could actually dangle Michael Rivera. And I think that I think that we've already been dangling him. The way that he puts it is they could comfortably dangle him. They don't have to worry too much about it. But I think they're trying to build something here. They're trying to build some depth. They're trying to build some continuity. And the more weapons for Musgrave and for Derek Carr, I think the better. Obviously they're going to want to run the ball. That's why they built up the interior of the line. Bringing in somebody like Lee Smith and Walford and putting those two guys on either ends of the line, I think is going to create some really powerful mismatches. But I don't know. I liked Michael Rivera since we first got him. I think he brings, nobody looks quite as pretty when he's cutting down that seam and catching that ball. Right. He just looks so fluid and athletic, whereas Walford kind of has that, Terminator type of, muscular kind of stride that he takes down the field. So, it's going to be interesting, to see. But I hope they don't trade Rivera. But I can understand, if they do that. Question number 2 coming in is another pretty interesting one, and that is, will the Raiders carry 5 wide receivers into training camp? And what he says in this portion is that last year, again, the Raiders, I think Rod Streeter started game 1 and then didn't see any action for the rest of the season. That we've got, that we carried 4 wide receivers last year, but that the coaching staff has kind of hinted that there's just a lot of production and talent right now in training camp and through these practices at the wide receiver position with Max McCaffrey and also Joe Hansley, who seems to be popping up. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that they carry a 5th receiver like they did with Rod Streeter last year and maybe just keep him inactive? Or do you think that they carry 5 and have him active? Or do you believe that nobody at the wide receiver position is going to make it on this roster?
Here's where this question gets really interesting for me, Pirate, is that last season we just didn't carry 5 wide receivers. We actually carried 6. If you remember, we traded Butler shortly after the season began, but Butler was on our roster at the beginning of the season. We traded him to Dallas. So we carry a 53-man roster, but I think we only run 48, I believe is the number, that suit up on game days. So we were able to carry 6 wide receivers at the beginning of the season, but that was also due to the fact that we only had 2 quarterbacks. So we could actually take this question in that direction, and maybe we'll in here in a few minutes, but just focusing on the receivers, we could essentially carry 6. And I think the wild card here is Andre Holmes. He's been on the roster for, I think this is going to be his 3rd season now, and he's been okay. He's more of a situational type wide receiver. He's not your everyday wide receiver. At least he hasn't been for us. So, Holmes could be on the bubble. A lot of people talk about Seth Roberts and where he fits into the system. But when you got guys like McCaffrey, who's a red zone threat, but he can work all over the field, I think he can threaten Holmes' position. And then you talk about Joe Hensley, a guy that's already making a name for himself, especially in the kick and punt return game, which is an area that we need. I mean, that could shoe him right in. I mean, if all reports stay true and that he is showing a dynamic ability in kick returns and punt returns, that almost locks him into our roster, at least as the 5th or 6th wide receiver. So I'm looking for both those guys, McCaffrey and Hensley, to really make a lot of noise heading into training camp. We'll see how that all develops. But it's been very interesting over the course of the last few seasons as we've seen a lot of undrafted wide receivers make this roster, and it goes to show you the kind of talent that's out there from college to the NFL that doesn't get tapped in. I mean, we've had guys like Rod Streeter, we had guys like why is his name slipping my mind right now? Rod Moore, or I'm sorry, do you remember his name? Moore.
For what position?
For wide receiver. The wide receiver we had. I know his last name was Moore, but he's gone now. So there's just a lot of talent.
Oh, you're not talking about Denarius
Yes,
Moore.
I'm talking about Denarius Moore. Thank you.
Yeah.
I blanked there for a second. So like Denarius Moore.
I was like Rod Moore.
Yeah, Rod Moore. Right. There's a lot of guys out there that we've had on this roster that have proven themselves at this time of year, but none of them have ever panned out to be number one or heck, number two wide receivers at that. So Rod Streeter was probably the closest thing we've ever had to it in Rod We Trust, and that ended up falling off the map. And a lot of us don't know what happened last season. But back to the crux of the question, though, I believe that McCaffrey and Hensley have the best chance, and I think depending on what we do with our quarterbacks, we run a possible 6 wide receiver position on the roster. What's your thoughts, Pirate?
Well, I think you bring up some really good points and some points that I totally agree with. I've for a long time thought that Andre Holmes was just kind of a one-trick pony. When we originally got him, I was excited. Big guy, gets down the field, jumps up, should be able to high point the ball. I mean, this is going to be great. And I believe the first year that we had him, I mean, he was doing a lot of those things, but he's really a hit and miss guy. He doesn't produce when given the opportunity. All of these receivers had the opportunity to produce. The guys that we were talking about, Denarius Moore, Streeter, Holmes, they all had the opportunity to produce. And they didn't produce. Seth Roberts comes in as an undrafted guy. He's got the opportunity. He produced, right? He did some really, really good things. So when I look at a guy like Max McCaffrey and I think, okay, very similar to Rod Streeter, big red zone type of threat, a guy that could get up there and high point the ball. But he also goes across the middle. He's also a possession guy, very much like his father, has really, really good bloodlines. I think this is the type of guy that's going to take it and run with it if he's given the opportunity. Hensley reminds me very, very much of something that Chip Kelly would really appreciate, kind of one of those little speedy type of guys that just kind of keeps moving the chains. Used to kill us all the time. And there's a couple of guys that have made some pretty good names for themselves by doing that. Just little guys that, they're little jitterbug type of wide receivers, and they catch a little 2-yard pass and they get 4 or 5 yards, just enough, for a first down. New England used to just kill us with that, So again, I think because, like you said, of his ability to return kicks, his ability to make the flashy play and take it all the way for a touchdown. Yeah, the competition may have been a little lower there at Colorado State, but again, at the end of the day, both of these guys I think have potential. And just because Andre Holmes is still on the roster doesn't mean that he's going to be on the roster opening day. I mean, that's something that I think, people are just penciling guys in. Well, Crabtree and Cooper are going to be number 1, and then, Seth Roberts will be the established number 3, and then we're going to have, Andre Holmes is number 4. Andre Holmes doesn't fit the traditional number 4 wide receiver role. He's kind of one of those guys that you want at the number 2, maybe the number 3, kind of at the most, but he's not that, seam type of guy that's going to, take it up the middle of the field and do some different things. He's a guy that really wants to be on the outside, and we've talked about that in depth a couple of times. So when you get a McCaffrey, however, he sort of does fit that bill, right? He is a guy you put right into the middle of the field. You have him run crossing routes with Seth Roberts, and you throw the ball to whoever, whatever the coverage is kind of dictating. He's big, he's fast, he can high point the ball. And I think he's, because of the bloodlines, I think he's going to be a little bit more consistent. Nobody can say for sure. We're going to have to see. But again, I see both of these guys potentially making the team. And at the end of the article, down at the bottom, he says something that I think that made me pause for a second. He said, if any undrafted players are in a roster spot, it's likely one of these wideouts. Well, there's the potential that both of these guys can. But I think there's also potential at different positions, and we're not really going to get too much into that today because of the time frame of our show. But the bottom line is that I believe that both of these guys potentially could have a spot on this team. And I really, really like McCaffrey kind of sneaking in there and taking Rod Streeter's position. And I like Hensley coming in and being more of a special teams depth type guy like we talked about, maybe not getting a lot of reps with the offense, but really being able to do some things. And then on some key situations coming in and providing some matchup nightmares in the 5 wide, where you take your worst safety and you put him up against a guy like Hansley. So yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some potential for them to carry 5 in my opinion. I know it seems like a lot of undrafted players, but when you have really good coaching and you've got a really good core of teammates, I think that you can get away with some of that stuff.
No, man, that's what I'm looking for too. Is just we'll have to get into the subject even more, and maybe on another show. Especially, maybe we'll talk about the quarterbacks, because I think the quarterback situation is going to affect the wide receiver situation. So,
yeah.
All right. So at this point, guys, we're going to take a break, and when we return, we've got 3 more questions that we're going to go over, 3 more topics on the board. So stay tuned, and thank you for watching the W2W review, and we'll be right back.
Carpets is celebrating the holidays with a huge inventory clearance sale. We have the best prices and guaranteed installation. Why would you buy anywhere else? Whether you're looking for laminate, vinyl, carpet, tile, or wood, we have it all. Save up to 50% on selected items. Room size rugs, only $69. Visit Carpets at one of our 6 Bay Area locations, or call us at 1-800-355-4MMM.
All right, welcome back, Raider Nation, to the W2W review. Before we get started, I'm going to do a quick little PSA for our boy Watts Raider. If you guys haven't checked out Watts Raider, you need to head over to his channel. The link will be in the description. He just put out a video called Why I Hate the Broncos, or I Hate the Broncos. So the link will be in the description. Go check out our boy Watts Raider. He's a really good supporter of the show, and we wanted to make sure we showed him some love today. All right, Pirate, so what do we got next up on the list today?
Yeah, well, what we have is the next thing that Maurice wrote about is what will safety Carlos Joseph look like in action. And he quotes, Ken Norton. He says, the Raiders have had about 3 years to sort of look at game tape on Carl Joseph and how he plays. And, he says, Ken Norton states that, he's a tough guy. He's like a ball of dynamite. Plus, he's a ball hawk. So they're just saying they're really excited that he's a good football player. And, the more good football players that you have on a team, the better your team's going to be. That sounds like an obvious statement, but it really is true. So with the addition of Reggie Nelson, our safety position was extremely weak in the past, and what's the safety position going to look like this year? So, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, over the course of the last few years, we've been just running kind of like a one-trick pony in the safety position, right? Charles Woodson. So, anytime you could add just straight football talent to your football team, you're improving, and that's what Reggie's been able to do over the course of the last, especially 3 years. It's just add a lot of football IQ and a lot of football acumen, and we're seeing that. And Carlos Joseph fits that bill. Now, he's teaming him up with a lot of talent too around him. I do like Nate Allen in situations, so I think it takes the pressure off Nate Allen. I like Reggie Nelson as a complementary piece. But the major thing that we're going to get from Carlos Joseph is a straight raw football player. The guy can run. The guy is a ball hawk, which you need to be in that position. But most importantly, this guy could hit. And although he might cause us a few penalties down the road, I think it brings that attitude, that confident factor, that swag, as you would say, to our defense. It's something that I think that we've lacked. I mean, yeah, Khalil Mack brings a swag, but Carlos Joseph's going to bring it on the back end. So now we're going to have swag in the front and swag in the back. So yeah, I think the rest of the league needs to watch out. The Raiders are going old school on them right now. Yeah, we're looking like 70s type defense, man. I'm excited.
Well, I look at it and think to myself, when you got a guy like Reggie Nelson, who is a ball hawk, it may be getting old, a little bit older, but he's a ball hawk. He can catch the ball. You got, Carl Joseph, who had 5 interceptions before he was injured. And he got injured in the 4th game of the season. So these are guys that not only can they get there, not only can they, track the ball in the air, cover their guys, hit and do those types of things. But these are guys that high point the ball and take the ball away, like we were talking about with McCaffrey or somebody like Andre Holmes. These are the types of players that can get there. And even though Joseph is a little bit shorter, he's got leaping ability. I mean, this guy can get up there. You watch his film. He can get up there and he can make the play and he can take the ball away. So it's going to be really exciting when that pressure starts coming. And those quarterbacks, they don't have anywhere to go. They're going to try to move up in the pocket. They're going to realize the pocket is collapsing. They're going to see that the ends are coming around the corner. And they're just going to put that ball up. It's going to be a second or two before they probably should, or even a half a second before they probably should. And you're going to have those big corners, those two big corners back there playing off zone, waiting for that ball to come out. And you're going to have these safeties that are also back there looking to be opportunistic. So we've had good safeties in the past. We have never had safeties at both positions. If we're not looking at the 70s and things of that nature, but we haven't in a very long time had two safeties back there that could go up there and create a lot of turnovers. So you talk about the pressure from the outside, the pressure from the interior, the coverage in the middle of the field by the linebackers, and now you're talking about our secondary potentially having ball hawks all over the field at all cornerback positions. We don't have a stone hands back there, and we've had stone hands for a long time. We've had good cover guys, but stone hands guys for a long time. So it is going to be exciting. I think it's going to be great. All right, so our next question now, Jihad Ward. Will he follow in Mario Edwards' footsteps? So Maurice goes on to say that, the Raiders have had some questionable picks in the second round, going and picking athleticism and sort of like talent over, or I'm sorry, not talent, but potential over talent on the field. And so I think he's talking about guys like Menelik Watson and some of those types of guys. But, again, Reggie has gone out there and he's also had some home runs, and Derek Carr and, also Mario Edwards Jr. So he asks, is Jihad Ward going to be able to follow in the footsteps of Mario Edwards Jr.? He's kind of an anomaly right now, doesn't have the experience that they're looking for, doesn't have the production that they're looking for, but obviously has the physical skills. Do you think that Jihad Ward is going to follow in the footsteps of Mario Edwards Jr.?
I believe all signs are pointing to that. I mean, just coming out of OTAs and minicamp, there's a few things that was mentioned about Jihad Ward that sticks out into my head. Number one, his speed and his burst and his strength, his size. Right? These are the things that you can't teach. He has all the athletic ability, and I like our coaching staff to teach him the rest. I mean, like you said, Reggie has really put himself out there to find football acumen, smart IQ players that have a passion for the game, that have a great story, and he's really hit on a lot of these guys, Mario Edwards Jr., Derek Carr, even a guy like T.J. Carrie, Gabe Jackson, Justin Jelly Ellis. These are just to name a few. I could keep going. The only one that he's really missed on right is DJ Hayden, but he was going to be a great story, and his story's not done being written yet. For a lot of us, it is, but we'll see what happens this season. But with a guy like Jihad Ward, man, I mean, this cat is he has all the potential in the world. We have a great coaching staff. When you look at what Edwards did last season, everybody talked about his lack of speed on the outside. Well, we didn't use him primarily on the outside. He had plenty of speed for the inside. So I look at Jihad Ward, it's the same thing. And we're going to get a lot more into that. I don't want to spill the full beans. We're going to be covering this in depth Friday, so make sure you stay tuned for that show. But ultimately, the answer to that question is yes, Jihad Ward can make just as much of an impact, if not more, than Mario Edwards Jr. did last season. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that, again, we're going to cover that. And we're also going to cover the last part of that, which is TJ Carrie and where will he take the majority of his reps, I think, on our Friday show. So we'll just kind of touch base on that real quickly here. Where do you think he takes?
Well, I look at TJ Carrie being the slot guy. Sean Smith, David Amerson, they got the outsides locked up. I know that people are talking maybe a punt return or two, but we got Hensley making a name for himself there as well. So I see Carrie being the slot guy, unless anything haddle with Hayden in the slot. But that's where Carrie will end up.
Absolutely. I believe the same thing, man.
Yeah. So moving forward, I mean, we have a great show coming up Friday, man. The defense is going to be something that we're excited about this season. I mean, me and Pirate, in most of our conversations, we talk defense because we're just so excited. We believe, we see it. It's sometimes you have that epiphany where you're just awoken and you just look across and you see something happening and it just all fits in your brain, and that's what the defense has been to us this season. So we can't wait for Friday's show. We hope you guys tune in and watch it. Was that all the questions we had, Pirate, or was there one more on the docket?
No, that's it, man. I think we're good to go.
So any final thoughts on today's episode, Pirate?
No, man. We're just excited to be here on a daily basis, and we will see you guys tomorrow.
And don't forget, guys, head over to Facebook. We're going to be implementing more stuff on Facebook as we move forward. So go check us out, The Will to Win, on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and also feel free to email us any questions at theww2w@gmail.com. That's theww2w@gmail.com. As always, Raider Nation, from the Will to Win broadcast to you guys. You guys have a great day. Stay Raider strong, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.